Warren Cox and welcome to Shine Brighter. Today we're going to talk a little bit about familiar surprises, why this can help you on doors and in the home, and why we all prefer them as people. So, why do we like what we like? Mark Thompson wrote an incredible book, The Four-Letter Code to Selling Anything. I would really advise reading that. It would help you a lot in door-to-door, especially in in-home consultations and in sales in general. But is there a formula for why people like what we like? Of course there is. The golden ratio, there's tons of philosophers that have written about that. The most common, especially back in the day before things started to change a lot with online, was the most common first key to a new formula was new or novelty, right? We actually as people hate new or novelty. What works better is the mere exposure, right? Us as human beings like things that we are more familiar with. Works today. If you look at things on Instagram or things with filters, most people will flip the ratio of their photo because they think it looks better. It's not that, they actually look better. It's the same exact photo. Why do people flip-flop those? It's just we're used to seeing and we like what we see in the mirror. When we look in the mirror, we're seeing ourselves opposite, right? So when you see yourself directly on, we don't necessarily like that. It looks a little bit weird. We like and we're comfortable with what we're familiar to, right? So this will help you if you can relate things to people, make it seem like it's easy process. It's something they're already comfortable with, already doing. We're just kind of revolutionizing the way people buy and receive power, but they're still buying and receiving power, right? Almost in the same way, just from their rooftop. It'll really help you. Just use that mere exposure to the best of your ability. We like what we know, right? People prefer the face they see in the mirrors over the photos of themselves, like we said. In our genetics, we're hunter-gatherers. We eat what we know. If someone else has eaten it, we know, and they've survived, we know, ingrained in us, that we'll probably survive. Same thing with hunting. We know if somebody has hunted something, they've eaten that animal, that in the past, this is ingrained in our DNA. We know that we're probably going to be safe eating that, right? Those are the reasons why people know why we should cook chicken all the way, but we can eat steak on the more rare side, right? It even is ingrained in our DNA as hunters and gatherers. It causes issues for creators, though, big time, because you want to go with new, you want novelty, you want to do something different, but you only really like what you're kind of used to and what you know, and you want to take advice from others almost to the extreme too much sometimes. So causes issues for creators, kind of gets them in their head and gets them at war, at battle. So be careful if you're a huge creator. How do we become optimally familiar? People prefer familiar surprises. Boat in the river, when people were doing studies of people that were scared of water, they would slowly take them in a boat in the river, then they would take them in a bay, and then finally out in the ocean. It seems easier. It's an easier transition. If you're petrified of open water, it's easier to transition into those things. So if we use a store, so how do we become optimally familiar? If we use an example of a store with no branding, or a product with no branding, no names, no pricing, nothing like that, we use names. You can use names as that. The basis of names, if you go back through history, a lot of those are just stem offs from previous names. Elizabeth to Beth, things like that. William to Liam. It goes all the way down. A lot of those, and they just run in courses and in time, and they become popular. That's why you'll end up with 5 Justins in the same class in school, or 6 different Pauls. It kind of runs in sequence. These aren't things where people were out promoting names. A lot of times they were having children at the same time. A lot of times you didn't want to name your child with something that was popular so everybody would be called that. You wanted something different. It just runs its courses. So if you want to use an example of things that have no branding, no advertising, no nothing like that, use names as that, right? People like things they're familiar with. That's why even names down the road are stem offs of something that was already in their family, a family-run name, or stem off from names that were popular in the past, right? Most popular names are variations from previous familiar surprises. Most people pitch their familiarities. Like when I'm new, I would pitch my familiarities. what I knew about solar. Instead, try to flip the code of contact and find out the other person's familiarities, right? Make it familiar to them. Why did they choose? Questions you can use. Why did they choose the utility they were in? Usually, in certain markets, it's kind of a condescending question. Sometimes they didn't have a choice. If you're in markets where it's deregulated, maybe they did. Try to use their familiarities. Why did they choose that, right? It gives you more info into how to pitch that person. Make it familiar to them. The more people see it, the more they do it. That's why the more you work in the same area, the more installs you get up. Every time you're getting an install, it's like hitting the reset button. People are getting more familiar with it. You're building more credibility. The more people see it, the more people will do it. So a lot of times I've heard in certain markets, oh, it's very saturated. I've worked in New Jersey and South Carolina, all over, where people said it was very saturated markets and had huge success, right? The more people see it, the more it is easier for them to do. The more they become accustomed with it, the more they believe it. Believing is seeing, right? So try not to pitch the novelty. Don't pitch what's novelty or new to people. Pitch what they're familiar with. And hopefully you'll have a little more success. Hope this helps you again. Make sure you're out there shining brighter and not pitching the novelty. Pitch the familiarities. Hope it helps.